Welcome to Stand Alone, where we go from being ordinary to extraordinary. And Stand Alone is about leadership in your life. And so when I think of the great leaders of the world, it's people that are doing amazing things. And today's guest, is nothing but that. He is doing amazing things. So Jeff Henderson has come out with a new book, What to Do Next. And we're going to dive into this. But what's really incredible about Jeff is, he is creating a movement. And I think for a lot of people, when we get into a calling of our life, that's where everything really shifts and everything starts to fall into place. And Jeff is an entrepreneur, a speaker, a pastor, a business leader. He's worked alongside of names that we are so familiar with, John Maxwell. You are an integral role in the marketing of Chick-fil-A. And, the wisdom that you share with all of these great business leaders in your books, it's not just something that you take, for granted. You actually implement and execute on that. And today, Jeff, I really wanted to dive into your book. And I really am just so honored to be in your presence today and for you to be shared with our community, because a lot of us feel this way, feel this something inside of us, like, is there more? And I wanted to kick this off by, number one, saying thank you for being with us, but then for us to really dig into this so that we could offer help. And I love that your company, the For Company, is really tying in purpose and profit, because right. I feel like that's what's, really kind of like nagging at all of us on the inside. Can I do great work and can it serve instead of just taking withdrawals from the world? How can I make deposits? So thank you. And let's kick this off. What instigated this book for you? Because you were in a good place. Often crisis makes us change directions in our lives, but you're rare in the sense that you said, no, there's something more inside of me. So what started this book for moving on to what is next?
Sure. First of all, Sabrina, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be with you today. So thanks for lending me your credibility to your listeners and your community. It means a lot. And so I've made 4 big moves over the last 20 some odd years, and each one of them have come with risk. And the question I get a lot is, how do you eliminate risk with a career decision like that? And I have good news and bad news. The bad news is you don't eliminate risk. The good news is that you can shrink it, you can manage it. And so it's not like you're making a leap over the Grand Canyon. You may make a leap over a mud puddle and get wet and muddy, but at least you're not plunging thousands of feet below. So what I've discovered is there are some principles and strategies of how I'm figuring out what to do next that allows you to move with confidence, even in the face of uncertainty and risk. And the overarching principle is, don't let what you don't know rob you of what you can do. There are some things you can do, and I can't figure out necessarily what to do for the rest of my life, but I can implement some strategies to help me figure out what to do next. And what I've discovered is that that's really freeing for people. They go, oh, you mean I don't have to have a 30-year plan, or I don't even know if a 5-year plan with as fast as this world is changing, if that even makes some sense, right? I just have to figure out what to do next. Absolutely. And so for me, I have a personal advisory board. These are just people in my life that speak wisdom into my life. And I got this idea from Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great. And he said, if Coca-Cola has a board of advisors, you should probably have a board of advisors. And so about 3 years ago, I sat down with them and said, hey, you and Wendy are going to be empty nesters in about a year and a half. What do you think you're going to do or want to do in that season? And I hadn't really thought about it, Sabrina. And I thought, wow, that's a interesting thought. And I kept getting requests to come speak on my first book, to help. A lot of churches are doing what I wrote about in the book. A lot of nonprofits and businesses are doing it. But I kept saying no because I didn't have the time, because I had a full-time job. And they said, whoa, time out. This might be your next season. And so that began a journey toward next. So I would say it first begins with looking around at your life, and to see where's the momentum, and we all have momentum. We may not have as much momentum as we want, but we all have momentum. And another overarching principle in the book is the pathway to your dream job often leads through your day job, because your day job is providing you insights about what you're good at, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are that you want to avoid. Your day job provides your personal network of people that you know. And that's important because who you know is often more important than what you know. And so for me, as I started looking around about my strengths, where was there momentum? There was momentum with the 4 book. And there was momentum with people asking me to come speak on this. I thought, I think this is the next season. But I got a green light from all the important people in my life to go, yes, we think you should do this. So to your question, sometimes it's a combination of restlessness. Sometimes it's a combination going, you know what, I think I've pretty much done everything I can do here. And I felt like there wasn't as much opportunity for me to grow anymore as a leader at this particular opportunity. And another strategy I talk about is when there's no room to grow, it's probably time to go. And that doesn't mean to be reckless, but it's like, you know what? I feel like I have a stewardship responsibility to shrink or to wring everything I can possibly get out of my life to add value to others. And if I'm hitting a wall, or I'm like, you know what, I think I've done everything, I need to hand it off to another leader and move on, then I need to make the hard decision to let go. But in my case, I had to let go in the middle of a global pandemic. So there's all of that fear and all of that. And what am I doing? And all that's natural. So so as I made this decision, I had so many other people coming up to me going, I think I want to pursue something next. And what can you tell me about that? And so that was really the genesis of the book. Like, oh, I think I've learned some things. I've learned some things what to do. I've learned some things what not to do. And it's helped me pursue what's next. And so for your community and for the people that you serve, if they're trying to figure out what to do next, I certainly hope what we're going to talk about in the book will be helpful.
Yeah, so there's so much there for us to unpack because, especially with timing, and you talk about this in your book. So this is why you need to get the book, because it's a manual for you to ask yourself the right questions, right? And a lot of times, especially in today's world, and if you can help to elaborate on this, in today's world, people aren't really seeking wisdom anymore. What they're seeking is someone who agrees with how they feel so that they have permission to move forward. And that's not really making moves that are, really going to help us. And I love that you talk about these words, because even though we could be restless, it doesn't mean we have to be reckless. And I see people that are making reckless decisions because we all have this feeling inside of us for more. That's natural. And when you're healthy, you want to grow, you want to do more. But that's why this book is so important, because it's not about let me irritate your spirit and get you to do the next thing, but no, sit down with yourself, spend the time to ask those questions. So I wanted to really break this down with the beginning of timing, to spend some time on this issue of timing, because often when a young 20-year-old is listening to someone who has lived their life, and now I'm in my 40s, and as I get older, I still have a little restlessness inside of me.
Sure.
But a 40-year-old restlessness is not the same as a 20-year-old restlessness, right? So why is starting where you are and defining reality? Because you say this in the book, and I love this, to be honest, where you say, be honest where you've been and how you got to where you are, so that becomes the platform to then move ahead, instead of just making reckless decisions like I feel something and I'm going to move on it. No, this is not what we are talking about. And if you could really dive into this, I think this will help people a whole lot right now, because as the world is changing at such a rapid pace, it's almost like it's igniting this feeling in us more. But we can make some bad decisions if we're not surrounded by wisdom, right?
Right. Well, one of the ways I'd love to answer that is if I could turn the tables on you, Sabrina, and ask, okay, so here you are doing this, but this was an idea. So what was your process? Because I think as you tell me your process, we're going to discover some principles here. But just tell us your process from, hey, I want to have this podcast. I want to create this community. Where did that idea go from an idea to this is actually a thing now? So tell me about that process real quick.
Yeah, for me, a lot of people have reached out for me to help mentor them, to help counsel them. And as being a mom of 3 young children, how much time do I have? Because I also run a business that takes a lot of my time. And so this was a way for me to connect with people that I value. I could add more value to other people in a way that best serves my time, people's time. So I always look for high value people to have conversations with instead of just doing this for the sake of doing this for fame and popularity, and I know that in my connections, it starts to lead to different opportunities and ideas for the future instead of me, and you talk about this in the book, forcing something to happen, which I don't want. I have always asked for God to guide my life, right? And not for me to just go after what I feel is right. And sometimes he puts people in my life where I'm like, I would have never thought about this being the connection or this being the way. So just being open to that. And then, what has happened is it's more real. So people can relate to it on more of a genuine level, as opposed to me finding myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Love it. So what you described were 3 things. You described a calling, meaning people were calling me. They were asking me, hey, for help about this or that. The second thing you described was gifting. You are gifted to do what you are doing. And then the third thing you talked about was timing, right? And it all has to, there's both timing from, I don't want to spend all my time because I got 3 kids, right? So I gotta be a good parent too, in terms of, but also want to be a good business leader. So the intersection of those 3, gifting, calling, and timing, is how you find in many ways what to do next. But here's the deal. The timing one, the third one, the gifting one is, fairly easy to discover. The calling is, hey, I need to solve a problem for people. The timing is the one that frustrates the people the most. And the reason is because next, usually, not all the time, but finding next usually requires more time than you think. And this is why I tell younger leaders, the fast track is slower than you think. And that's actually a good thing, because what you can't microwave and fast track is character. What you can't fast track are hard seasons in your career, which is honestly, you're going to learn the most when you go through the hardest seasons. And so when we want to fast track a hard season and get out of it as fast as we can, I totally understand that, but we are robbing ourselves of growth. And so if you are in your 20s or 30s and you're at a company and you're like, I should have had a promotion. I've been here 6 months after all, right? It's a slower process. And so that's why I talk about in the book, the value of the waiting room. Sometimes you're in a season of waiting, and we have 3 options to wait. We can wait recklessly, like you talked about, in terms of, we don't want to just be reckless about this decision. So we could say, you know what, I've been on this job for 2 years, nothing's happening, I'm quitting and just going to try to figure it out. Okay, that's one option. Waiting passively is to give up and go, you know what, it's just the way life is, and I'm just going to stop dreaming. Or you can wait actively. Waiting actively means develop a group of advisors to give you advice, build your personal network, develop or make sure that you're aware of what your gifts are. A lot of folks, one of the most important things they could do is to move themselves closer to financial freedom and financial independence, so that they can give themselves options if the company does, close down or whatever. Because for some of us, Sabrina, next happens to us. The company closes down, we got downsized, we get let go. This is why I tell people, whether you're trying to figure out what to do next right now or the next year, you should be applying these principles, because at some point they're going to help you. It's just like, investing for retirement. Investing a little bit today may not seem like a big deal, but 20 years from now, it will. This is why building your personal network of people that you know is so important. And in fact, the question I get is, what's the single most important thing I should be doing right now, Jeff, if I've got to figure out what to do next, especially if I've got let go from my job? The number one thing by far is to go to your phone, look at your contacts, and start calling people and saying, can I have coffee with you? Can I have breakfast with you? Because I believe we are 1 to 2, maybe 3 people away from that next opportunity. I mean, we've been told that we're only 6 degrees separated from Kevin Bacon, Footloose, right? So if we're 6 degrees separated from Kevin Bacon, we're probably just 1 or 2 or 3 people from going, oh, you know what? I'm glad you said that, Sabrina. I bet if you met with this person, they could help you. So from a timing standpoint, we get frustrated that it takes so long. But part of the reason we get frustrated is because we're not actively waiting in the right strategies. Mm-hmm. And when you are moving forward with the right strategies, you allow your gifting, you allow the calling, and you allow the timing to begin to intersect. And my experience is when you focus on those 3 and are working and are patient, the timing will show up at the right time.
Yeah, I love this. And if we could take it to the other side, I have the great fortune of working with also a lot of people that are older, right? And then, their lives have shifted, their careers, sometimes industries have shifted, and they end up coming and they're working alongside me. And I'm in awe of them because I have so much respect for someone who has lived a great life and then is still not afraid to reinvent and to learn new. And sometimes when you are coming from a position of being older, what advice could you give for that group to just share with them? Like, you have to come down from where you are to relearn. And it is kind of a humbling experience. And I've seen people go through it. And I just have so much respect for people that are able to do that, because we're often talking about young leaders, but there's a lot of, I think, older people that have leadership capabilities, but never had an opportunity to express it. So they're navigating through these waters right now and looking for those opportunities, but they shouldn't be afraid of that.
Absolutely. And I have a mentor of mine that says the older we get, the more risks we should take. But the exact opposite is what happens, right? The older we get, the less risk we take, because we think, oh no, if this doesn't work, and this isn't a call to be risky and unwise, but I love what Clint Eastwood said when somebody asked him, why are you still directing movies? You're in your 80s. And he said, well, I wake up every day and I have this statement to myself, make this statement to myself: don't let the old man win today. Don't let the old man win. And so I don't want to let the old person win. Now, this doesn't mean to be reckless, as we talked about earlier, but sometimes, in this most current move, people would say, Jeff, you're in your late 50s. I mean, there's a global pandemic going on, and you're venturing out. Don't you think you need to play it safe? I don't want to play it safe. I want to play it wise. And sometimes the riskiest thing isn't leaving. Sometimes the riskiest thing is staying. And we all know, you and I know people, Sabrina, who decided not to leave and push that down the dreams and desires of their heart and soul in exchange for security, in exchange for, I'm not going to pursue this because what if it doesn't work? And while I totally understand that, and again, this is not a plea to make a really rash decision, it is a call to say, hey, the older you get, the more opportunities you should pursue, because that's what keeps you younger. I mean, you mentioned John Maxwell earlier. John's 75 years old, just celebrated his 75th birthday earlier this year. He's impacting more people and reaching more people and serving more people. He's literally changing governments. I mean, it's amazing. But there's a lot of risk associated with that. There's a lot of growth he's got to keep up, and he's got to understand social media. At 75, there's not a lot of people that understand social media at 75. So all of this is really, really important. And the reason John has so much energy is because he keeps growing. He has something to look forward to. And while I'm all on board with making very wise decisions, sometimes the wisest decision is to take a risk. And once you employ the strategies that we talk about in the book in terms of, surrounding yourself with wisdom and managing all the things that you need to do in terms of managing the risk, yes, there will be a leap, but it'll be, as I mentioned earlier, it won't be that gigantic of a leap. You can do this. And the other thing is, it may not work perfectly. What actually works out perfectly, right? But you can morph and pivot because you've positioned your life in a way that allows you to pivot whatever may happen as you pursue what's next. There's some things that have happened in these 2 years that I've been doing this that didn't work out exactly like I thought, but we were able to pivot, and we're now in a better season because we went through a little bit of that journey together.
Yeah, you talk about the journey of an idea, and I love this because so many of us have all these great ideas, but after the birth of an idea, you talk about the death of the idea, and then it has to be resurrected. If you could explain that to people. Sometimes, like when we start a new career, everyone tries to kill that idea of what we're doing. And for some people, it stays in that death. And then for other people, they can shut out the noise and they can stay focused and they can get to that ascension level that you talk about. Could you share with us, like, this is the reason why change is so hard, because we're going to go through that dip, that valley, and you have to find your way out of it, right? So if you could explain to everyone that it's not going to be a walk in the park, you're not going to like get there and it's like, oh yes, this is my confirmation, I made the right decision. No, we're going to have to go through that death part that you talk about. Could you elaborate on that for people? I feel like this would be very powerful.
If we're looking for easy, next is not for you. But here's what I know about your community, your listeners. You didn't sign up for easy. You signed up for worthwhile. And no one gets to the end of their lives and go, oh, I'm so glad that was easy. We want to get to the end of our lives and go, wow, that was worthwhile. It was up and down and challenging, but man, look at what happened. And I'm so grateful that I pursued this. So the four steps, the journey of an idea, if you look almost, I mean, maybe there's exceptions to this, Sabrina, but if you look at almost any company that really just started as an idea, whether it's a multi-billion-dollar company like let's say Home Depot. I mean, I'm from Atlanta, and that's where Home Depot. If you look at how that started, it started with an idea. It was the hard death of the idea. I mean, Arthur Blank, the co-founder, talks about nobody showed up really for their store opening, right? And then there's the resurrection of the idea gets better, and then it ascends. An example of this would be, let's take Jenny's ice cream. If you're familiar with Jenny's Splendid Ice Cream, she was going to go in the perfume business, but one day she decided to take a scent and mix it with chocolate ice cream. And she said, this is the first time I'd had, it was a cayenne pepper scent ice cream that was hot and cold at the same time. And she goes, I want to start an ice cream business. So she started an ice cream business called Scream, which I love the name, Scream for ice cream. So it was great, right? So that's the birth of the idea. But Scream closes down in about 2 or 3 years. All right, so the idea dies. Then she goes into her favorite coffee shop and orders her favorite bagel, and they tell her, we don't have your bagel today. And she's so disappointed, but then she says she slowly backs out of the store, realizing that's what I did at Scream. I didn't have consistent products. What if I started over again, but I had consistency in terms of what I offered? So that was the resurrection of the idea that she called Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams. And now, fast forward just a few years later, they're in 40 states and a multi-million-dollar business. So that's the journey of the idea. And so what we have to understand is the idea and the spark of the idea, and even grand opening day or grand opening week. I've opened plenty of Chick-fil-A restaurants in my life. That's exciting. But at some point, things get really hard. At some point, the idea either dies or slows down. And what entrepreneurs and leaders have to understand is when it dies, when it gets hard, you have a choice. The choice is this the conclusion and final chapter of this idea, or is it just chapter 2? And chapter 3 is, I got to move from chapter 2 to chapter 3, and from chapter 3 to chapter 4. So this whole idea, the journey of an idea, has been so incredibly helpful for me, not only in the organizations that I've helped launch, but in presentations that I'll give. I mean, you're a communicator. Like when you're speaking to a group, you first have an idea for a presentation and then you start working on it and you're like, this is the worst idea in the world. Well, that to me, it's so helpful because I just remind myself, yeah, well, this is just the death of the talk. So I got to keep working, keep working. And if I keep working, the talk gets better. So this whole journey of an idea is a helpful reminder for me when I hit the tough spots, when I hit the rough patches, when things don't go perfectly according to plan. Hey, I'm just in phase 2. I'm in just chapter 2. Keep moving ahead, keep moving forward, try to pivot, keep moving forward, because if I keep moving forward, I'm going to discover something that I don't know right yet. So in fact, I put in the book, if we have a little picture image of the journey of an idea, if listeners will text me, I'll send them the picture from my phone just to say, hey, if they're having a bad day or they're hitting a rough spot, I'll just text them this picture and say, hey, add this to your wallpaper and just remind you, you're just on the journey. And so that this whole idea, the 4 steps of an idea, whether it's a business, a talk, whatever, has been so helpful for me.
Yeah, it's helpful for life. This is how to navigate through this. You talk about a money wall, and I wanted to ask you to just elaborate on that, because I love that your company brings in together the idea of purpose and profit, right? Because a lot of people, if we're just resting on the idea of being purposeful, yes, but on planet Earth, I think when we get to heaven, it'll just be about purpose. But I think on planet Earth, we have to talk about the currency. We have to talk about that profit part too. But it's also making sure that, what is more strong for us. And then can we go after profit with purpose, with character, with, knowing that we're growing for the right reasons? It almost becomes something that fuels us and allows us to continuously grow, as opposed to some businesses and teams where it gets very manipulating and dark. And I've seen this in business, and it's, you start to see them unravel, and I think times are always hard, and maybe it's hard because your purpose is not good with your profit, or it's short-term profits and not long-term profits. Could you talk about what is the money wall and why profit and money is something that you have to think about, discuss, understand, know when you're dealing with what is next also?
Sure. Let's start at a very high level. Let's talk about changing the world. Okay, that's a big statement. How do you change the world? Well, I feel like you change the world one community at a time. And as one community gets better, I think the world gets a little bit better. Well, then you have to ask the question, well, how do you improve communities? How do you change communities? Well, there are a lot of different ways. You need to have great schools. You need to have great nonprofits. I think you need to have great churches. But one of the things you must have are great businesses. And here's why. If you don't have great businesses that are profitable, they don't have enough money to employ people. And if they don't have enough money to employ people, people either have to move or the company's just going to suffer. If you go into a declining community, what you will not see are thriving businesses. If you go into a thriving community, what you will see are thriving businesses. And so part of what we have to understand is profit is not evil. Profit is not cruel. Now, are there businesses that use profit for the wrong way? Sure. I think that's the exception. I think we have demonized business leaders. You see this in movies where it's the evil, greedy corporate, business people. Hey, I'm sure that's true, but in my experience, it's not the norm. I think people really they want to hire people, they want to pay them well, and they want to, have a purpose. So profit is not a bad thing. But if the goal of the business is just to stay in business, that's it. You won't. Because in today's world, staff members are looking for purpose. They're looking for purpose to show up with them at work. And this is why I tell business leaders, you can learn a lot from nonprofit leaders, because as a nonprofit leader, the only thing I had to sell, Sabrina, if you will, in quotes, is purpose. And in fact, I was sharing this with a friend of mine who's a business leader, and he and I went to college together, and he sold his business a few years ago. And I said, hey, I think there's a lot that you business leaders could learn from nonprofit leaders. And he said, Jeff, I'll be honest with you, I don't agree with that. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you a question. How many of your employees did you pay? And he said, what are you talking about? I said, well, how many employees, what percentage? Was it 100%, 50%? How many of your employees did you pay? He goes, we paid all of them. Well, that's a really, dumb question. And I said, well, it's not dumb, because here's why. Every Sunday at the organization I lead, hundreds of people show up to serve and work, and we don't pay them anything. They're volunteers. And the only reason they're showing up is because there's a purpose that's attached to them showing up on their off day on a Sunday morning to get up early and to serve other people. And that's when he thought, oh, okay, so you guys can understand purpose better than for-profit business. Well, I don't know about that, but that's what we have to sell. So the point being that purpose and profit travel together, okay? And so the more profit you have, if you have a compelling purpose, the more purpose you can fuel. And the more purpose you have, the more people are going to rally around your business. Because this is so interesting to me, Sabrina. One of the top questions that the younger generation is asking corporations and companies and businesses now is this question: what are you doing to help make our community a better place? That's a powerful, and I learned this from a friend of mine who works for a company called Kids 2. They provide family products for families, and they're on the cutting edge of young parent research. And he said, Jeff, that's the number one question they're asking us. What is your company doing to help make the community a better place? So we want to have more profit, but we've got to have a compelling purpose. And part of that compelling purpose is just to have a great culture and treat people with honor and dignity at the workplace and have a compelling purpose for them. So that's why profit is so important. At the same time, individually, when I talk about the money wall, what breaks my heart is when people go, oh, I figured out what to do next, but I can't go there because I can't afford it. I'm in so much debt. And so they have gifting, they're wired for that. There's a calling, right? But the timing is not right for them because they're not in a financial position to do so. That breaks my heart, because they sit there and they look kind of over the fence at purpose, and I can't go there because I'm so much in debt. So one of the most important things that people can do to figure out what's next, even if they're like, I'm not quite sure and I don't know where to go from here. Remember, don't let what you don't know rob you of what you can do. You can start to create some financial margin, whether it's through a financial course, through listening to a podcast, whatever it may be. You can shrink that debt so that it can free you up when next arrives. I say that from personal experience. When Wendy and I got married, we went through 2 financial small groups to get our finances together as a married couple, so that when we felt called to leave Chick-fil-A to help launch a church and take a significant pay cut, we were still able to do that because we had climbed the money wall, and we were not letting money make the decision for us. Money is extremely important, but money should never make the decision for your career. And I know that sounds easier said than done for a lot of folks, but I have seen people who are mired in hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt make significant inroads in a short amount of time. And in doing so, help them understand and position themselves rather to understand what to do next.
Yeah, this is very powerful, because, it leads us to just how you end the book, where you talk about finishing well. But, one of your mentors was the president, Tim, of Chick-fil-A. And he said this: don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to your potential. And I love that, because that's what's happening. And I think in your line of work, I know that you did a lot of great, successful marketing with Chick-fil-A. And, marketing is very external, right? It's what we see, it's how that makes us feel. So then it gets us to buy something. But what could you share in your wisdom of understanding, like, you've got to learn how to market to yourself so that you're not in this arena of comparing yourself too much. So sometimes a friend jumps into a business venture and you're like, oh, I should do that too. But that's that's not what that is for you. So that ties into finishing well because you're doing it for you. If you could talk about that, I think that's powerful for people to understand.
We need to be careful not to compare our lives to the highlight reel on Instagram, right?
Yes.
Because everything you see on Instagram, it looks so easy and they're so much further ahead than us and all that kind of stuff. What you don't see typically are the bad days, the hard days, challenging days that you and I have on a regular basis. And so you got to be careful with that comparison trap really does become a trap.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think we need to do is to understand that one of the best things that we can do is to cheer and celebrate on others. And when we see someone succeeding, it doesn't take away from you or me, Sabrina. When we celebrate them, it not only honors them, but it does something healthy in our soul. It does something healthy for us emotionally to just celebrate someone who is succeeding. And that requires you to have an abundant mindset and not a scarcity mindset. An abundant mindset says, hey, it's okay to cheer somebody else on. Their success doesn't rob me of my success or my opportunities. A scarcity mindset says there's just a limited amount of opportunity. And if someone gets it, I'm not going to get it. So I want to be able to celebrate and to celebrate people on social media and to highlight them and to use my little platform. We all have platforms to talk more about them and what they're doing. And then when that happens, they many times return the favor. But what my friend Tim Tosopoulos was talking about, he was talking about the difference between success and excellence. And success is comparing yourself to other people. Excellence is comparing yourself to your own potential. And that's a much healthier place to be. Because by the way, there's not a finish line there, right? You're always going to keep moving closer. You want to be closer to your potential, but you're never going to arrive there. And this is why when it comes to next, the first thing that happens typically before you get to next is leave. You have to leave where you are. Sometimes that's leaving a current established organization. Sometimes that's leaving a current season. And there's a principle here as well. And that principle is the better you finish your current season, the better you begin your next season. And so generally what happens if somebody leaves one job to go to the next, they put in a 2 or 3 week notice and they just, who cares what I do now? I'm going to sleep in and go play golf for 4 days. And while that's fine, I guess, that doesn't honor the people that you're working with. That doesn't honor, and it really doesn't honor your legacy. And so for me, when I've had the last 2 big moves I had from Chick-fil-A to leaving North Point Ministries to what I'm doing now, I wrote everyone on our staff at Gwinnett Church a handwritten thank you note. I met with everyone who wanted to meet with me. I put in a 6-week notice. I met with our leadership team and said, here's the work that I'm doing over the next 6 weeks. Is this what you want me to do? Is this going to help me give you the baton and move forward? I did the same thing at Chick-fil-A. I wrote everybody in the marketing department a handwritten thank you note, the executive committee a handwritten thank you note. And I worked for 2 months to finish really, really well. And now, how you leave an organization is one thing. How the organization leaves you is in their control. But as for you and me, we should try to leave as well as we possibly can and take the high road. John Maxwell says the high road is a toll road and it's an expensive toll, but it's worth every penny. And so leaving well is something that I think we sometimes take for granted, but it's part of how you honor where you've been. It's part of how you honor your legacy, and it's part of how you move forward, knowing that you did your best to finish well.
Yeah, this is very powerful, especially, you brought up the 6 degrees of separation, but sometimes people think, well, I don't have to care about those relationships anymore. I'm starting a new thing. But then you find out later on that that company is connected and the people at the higher level, they know each other and, information travels. And what I found in my journey is that the people often at the top, and you spoke about this, they're the most giving, they're the most caring, and they want to give back. They want to pour into people. And so that's why you have to care a lot about like who's around you and the impressions that you're leaving. So I love that you say this. I think, as we as we wrap this up, one of the things that you shared in there was just how to build your network. And I wanted for you to just elaborate on that, because that's something we all hear, your network is tied to your net worth. But then a lot of us, we feel like, well, how do I approach this person? How do I connect with them? And it is very intimidating. So you give some great breakdowns. So get the book to hear that. But if you could share one of them with everyone today, because we don't know how to build our network. And I think your book also helps to describe that to people. And that would help for people to know, like, why you should do the work. And I always say this to everyone, like, there's no one who's going to do the work for you. Do the work. As you do the work, things will start to come together for you. But how do we build this network?
There's the old Stephen Covey adage of the important but not urgent quadrant. Building your network generally is important but not urgent until it becomes urgent. And when it becomes urgent, you don't have as much time because if you lost your job or the company downsized, suddenly whatever your financial margin is determines how much time you have. So this is why I encourage people. One of the most important things that you can do in your career, whether you're pursuing what's next or not, is to build your personal network. But to your question, Sabrina, how do you do that? So we need to break it down into 3 different groups of people. The first group of people looking at your contact list would be people that you know really well. And they don't necessarily have to be in your field, right? But it's just people that are business people or people that you know that might know people, but you're good friends with them. And when you call them, they're going to answer your phone. Or when you text them, they're going to text you back. I would start with that group of people. The second group of people would be the people after that. And the second group of people are people that you don't know very well, but are in your industry. So let's say that you're in a restaurant industry. These are people that you might not know as well as the first circle, but they have restaurant industry experience. They owned a restaurant. They worked at a restaurant. They worked at a franchise restaurant, and you've got experience. Then the third group are people that you would like to know, but you don't have any access to. So the first group, you start meeting with that group and you ask them this question. This is the best networking question that I've ever heard. I got it from John Maxwell. And that question is, who do you know that I need to know? And then ask them, would you be willing to contact them on my behalf? Now, that's going to take some courage. And a lot of people, when I ask this or challenge them to do this, Sabrina, they'll think, oh no, Jeff, I don't want to bother people and I don't want to do that. Well, okay, but if you want to find what's next, you have to understand many times it's by who you know. And it's uncanny to me, the more people, the bigger that network is, and not even in terms of numbers, but just in terms of powerful connections, the quicker next arrives. Because again, as we said earlier, you're just 1 or 2 people away, 1 or 2 or 3 people away from that next opportunity. And this is why when we lose our job or the company gets downsized, that fear of bothering people goes away. Because like, now I'm feeling the pressure. Well, what if we imagined the pressure was there? What if we imagined that we lost our jobs? What if we imagined that the company was downsized? Okay, do that. One of the best leadership principles I've ever heard is when you're trying to figure out what to do from a leadership standpoint, ask yourself, what would a great leader do in this situation? Then do it. It's that easy and it's that hard. So pretend that you lost your job. What would you do? You would start calling people. I guarantee you, if you will do this, even if you're not looking for a job, even if you're not looking for next, and just talk to people, you will be shocked how fast opportunities begin to flow, because opportunities really flow usually through personal connections. So what happens is when someone loses their job or they're looking for a new job, they instantly do what I call the hard skills. They get a LinkedIn account, they work on their resume or CV, and all that's important. I'm not downplaying that. but it's really the soft skills, the interpersonal connections, the coffees, the lunches, the dinners, the breakfast. Those are the things that are really going to open up the opportunities. Now, you got to have hard skills, you got to have talent, all that kind of stuff. But this personal network idea cannot be overstated in its importance.
Yeah. And, I'm so honored to have brought you into our little network of group people that just care about leading their life instead of just having life happen. We're making an active decision to create. So, Jeff, I would love for you to share with people if we want to reach out and hear more from you and just like dive into this a little deeply. How do we connect with you? What are you working on that is your next? And then how can we connect with you so that we can actually grow and to the place where we are continuously walking? And I love that you started your book this way, and we'll finish this up. Just keep walking.
That's right.
Walking. So how do people get in contact with you?
Thank you, Sabrina. Well, here's a win-win, I think. It'd be a win for me if you picked up the book. So if your community could pick up the book, What to Do Next, it's available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and other places. But in the book, I as I mentioned, give you my cell phone number. And what I would love for you to do is once you read the book, text me and go, okay, Jeff, I read your book. I've done this or that, but I have a question about this, or, hey, I've done this, and am I doing it right? Or what would you think about this? Let's just develop a cell phone friendship and just text me. And I promise you, I will text you back. And I did this with my first book, and I get about 2 or 3 texts today. I've gotten 2 already today, and, respond. And that's great. So that's one of the best ways that you can stay in touch with me is get the book, read it, and then just text me. And they can go to jeffhenderson.com, but but the cell phone's in a couple of places in the book, and I would love for them to just text me and stay in touch with me and let me know how they're doing and how I can help. And hey, who knows? Maybe I know somebody in what they're trying to do that I can connect them. I might be one of those personal network people. So, but it'd be a huge win for me if they got the book, but then I'll return the favor by responding to their texts.
Love it. I love it. That's amazing. So get the book because it's allowing you to go to the next level and connect with amazing people. Thank you, Jeff, for your time today.
Thank you. My pleasure, Sabrina.